Right, and hopefully we should be live on there, Keith. I don't know if we are. Should be.
We are, mate. Yeah.
I'll just retweet these out, and then we'll get going.
What football was you watching at the weekend, Jay?
It's the kids, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was lovely, wasn't it? Nice weather.
Yeah, it was nice. Yeah. No, I've done both of mine yesterday.
It's just nice that they can get back playing.
Yeah.
My young niece played her first game for Enfield and pulled a quad. So she's not happy because she's managed to get herself into the third team at Enfield Town now. So she's doing really, really well. She's just disappointed that she's just first game back and she does that. So
It's that's the problem. There's going to be a lot of that. Have you played many games, Steve?
Just one.
Just one.
Oh, sorry, we had one friendly, and then that's it now because it was a cup competition.
It's the worry though, and it's injuries. It's just such a long time out, and people can say, "Oh, players should be keeping themselves fit," but you can't replicate it, can you?
Well, not only can you not replicate it. I had one lad who's basically got an overuse knee injury from road running, so he couldn't even train for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Couldn't get.
Don't know. It's like with you, Jay. I went and watched my younger son play yesterday before my older son, and I stumbled along. Quite a few of my old players, and plus a few others playing on Sunday for another YouTube channel team under the radar, which is quite big. And what side they had!
Yeah,
what side they had that! Oh my God!
They're all. I mean that Sunday league football round that way is frightening. I mean, I've seen some of the boys that are playing, and you just think, wow, it's just. But then I'm looking at the Olympian League and some of the sides playing the Olympian League football because they're still going. It's absolutely littered with guys from step 3.
right, guys, I'm just going to go with the titles, and then we'll go from there. Well, welcome to the D&K Reposs Non League show, and we're here for the next couple of hours. And of course, joining me as normal is my co-host, and of course the man, the legend he is. Got some nice suntan from his golfing by the looks of it as well. Of course, he's Mr. Keith McMahon. How are we, Keith?
Yeah, I'm good, Dave. Not just golf, obviously. Nice little drink at the weekend as well in the sun. and then the same as what Jay's doing, watching the kids play football yesterday. So yeah, I think it's a little bit windswept suntan as well as what it is. But
so I suppose first questions first, and let's get this done and dusted out of the way. The two big things that in Mickey Mouse football over the last couple of 24 hours or so. Of course, the disappearance of Mr. Jose Mourinho, you being a Spurs man, and of course this Super League. I mean, the Essex Senior League getting quite a lot of publicity in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, being a Spurs fan, am I surprised? No. Maybe a few days before the cup final, I was. And they, you know, David Levy's not silly. They must have someone in there already planned. I know you spoke about a few names earlier, which I'm hoping it's not that. But and obviously the Super League, I'm a little bit gutted that we're doing this right at the moment, and my TV's on mute with Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville, because I don't know if anyone listened to Gary Neville's interview when it first came. I thought it was absolutely first class.
Yeah, absolutely outstanding. Yeah, and he's a man, and all of a sudden he's come from. I don't know if the other two guys agree. He was one of those blokes that when he was playing football, he was a complete pain up the arse. Not many people loved him unless he was a Man United fan. And since he's got this sort of commentary and stuff, he seems to be one of everybody's favourite people to sit and listen to, and he talks a lot of common sense.
I think he's honest. That's the key quality, and I think people can relate to him because he's not just been a player, he's also involved in what was taken aside from non-league now into the Football League. So he sees all aspects of the game, but he gives you a real honest opinion. You never feel like he's shortchanging you. And certainly when it comes to punditry, I think there's a big difference now in between what I would consider the top ones of himself and Carragher and some of the others doing the job.
Yeah, I've heard they're going to break away. No, I think he's the best out there in terms of punditry and his explanation of the game and the context that he gives. I think he's brilliant. Although, you know, the whole European Super League thing, I'm surprised that so many people are surprised by it. I think it's fairly inevitable that something was going to happen, and it'll be interesting because the media seem to be driving it as this kind of awful thing and killing football. But if it does happen, I'd like to see them boycott any coverage of it. Won't happen.
Yeah, I think the surprise thing, sorry Dave, I think the surprise thing was that I think a lot of people might have thought they were using it as a bit of a bargaining tool, because obviously today was the Champions League thing, wasn't it? And I think they might have been like a threat, but actually the surprise was to announce that it's definitely happening and these 6 clubs are going to join. I think that was a surprise, I think, a little bit with that.
Yeah, I thought it was just a power play at first.
I think from what they've said today, though, that if it doesn't get stopped by anybody or everybody, then the government are going to step in and stop it anyway. So, you know, it sounds as if it's a no-goer, would you say? Because I think there's so much that's going to opposition to it that it possibly won't happen. And I think there's a meeting tomorrow, isn't there? I think I saw that there's the 14 Premier League sides minus the 6 that have got a Zoom call tomorrow.
Yeah, I think money will talk, though, Dave.
But ultimately, with that, in terms of giving the customer what they want, being the fan or the armchair fan who's going to pay the money to watch it, is that what people want to watch? Lack of competition, is that not what we enjoy watching? Is the unknown, the underdog type scenario? And I know that they've kindly said that they'd allow 5 other clubs to sit at the table on a rotation basis. But
yeah,
I'm not sure there's an appetite for it.
I think the big issue is the closed shop nature of it. And some of the clubs in there, really, when you look at playing record in the European Champions League or European Cup, they've got no right to be there, you know, compared to some of the clubs that are not in the conversation in other countries in Europe. I think it'd be interesting to see what the German clubs do over the course of the next few weeks, because I think they've been deadlines set, haven't they? And, you know, they've distanced themselves from it at the moment.
That's what they were saying,
and that speaks volumes.
That's what they're saying, though, Jay. Isn't the German league structure different? Where is it sort of the ownership is completely different to us, and they can't go ahead and do that. But Bayern Munich already announced that they are.
Yeah,
So,
it's 51%. I think there's 51% fan owned, isn't it? Each club's 51% fan owned. I know Borussia Dortmund came out on my way home tonight saying they're definitely not going into it. And then I think one of them turned around and said, "Would you think they were actually offered to go into it in the first place?" But who knows? But we should be a bit rude. We should introduce our two guests. Of course, top left next to me, of course, he's Jay, manager of #United, and of course, at bottom right, he's Simon, the manager at Norwich United. So welcome, guys, and welcome to the show. And it's lovely to have you on. But I suppose away from that news, we had some big news drop when we did the show this time last week, Keith, and for a non-league fan, it's probably a lot bigger than Super League and all the rest of it. Was this restructuring that, of course, when we had Anthony on the show and a few months ago or a few weeks ago, he turned around and said that this would never happen, and now all of a sudden it is happening. And it seems, when I interviewed Nick during the week as well, he was saying that it's going to happen, and he did let a few things slip there. And I don't know if you actually heard it, Keith, when he turned around and said that I think your biggest bugbear was that going into this season, there was no plan going forward for the season and what would happen if coronavirus hit again. And he actually said then that the leagues had come up with a plan, but the FA actually stopped that plan from going into existence.
Yeah, it's like I said, Dave. You mentioned it earlier with Anthony. I think a lot of clubs, when the first sort of lockdown, null and void happened, and then the second one were very sort of negative on the league, saying, look, what you're doing, you should have this plan, we should have this plan, and I stuck up for them quite a bit and said, look, how can you? This is unturned territories for everybody. And then obviously what happened last year, we've only playing a few games, and everyone sort of knows my thoughts on points per game, and obviously the restructuring. And then for people like Anthony that say no, it never happened, and then 3 weeks or 4 weeks later it is going to happen, it's like they don't know. They're sort of arse from their elbow, if I'm going to put it politely, and it's a bit worrying. And it's like the FA can decide and change words and do whatever they like, and it doesn't sit too well with me, if I'm honest. It really doesn't. And I made it, and I know the two lads are on here, and they could benefit from what could happen. But if I'm the teams at step 3 and step 2, I would be going absolutely doolally at the moment. And I think you said something that from Nick's interview, that there is no promotion. It's just restructuring.
Upward movement, I think, is the term.
Yeah, and I think there'll be a few teams at step 3 that would like to do an upward movement for certain people at the FA. If it's restructuring, Dave, why not downward moves from clubs as well? And fill it that way. I haven't got an issue on whatever happens. I think restructuring has to happen. I said that to you before, because the pyramid needs to be completed properly, without a doubt. I think you can't have teams going in playoffs not knowing if they're going to go up, or knowing they're not going to go up, and things like that. I think it's 100% got to happen. But I think it needs to be fair right across the board when they decide to do it. But just tell people, Dave, because obviously you might not have listened to Nick's interview, what it's about and everything as well.
So basically, we spoke to Nick on, I don't know what night it was now. Was it Tuesday, Wednesday? Whenever I spoke to him. Wednesday when I spoke to him. And we had a chat about the restructuring, and of course, it's all to do with the steps from right hand 6, 5, and going into 6 going into 5, 5 going into 4, and building another league, which I think, if I'm right in saying, is going into the Northern League.
Northern
is the other league that's going to be made at step 4. But of course, when pushed to him, there is no promotion. Is to the likes of Warner, Tiptree, Hastings, and these type of people. They stay where they are. There is no sort of upward movement from step 4 to step 3. And the likes of Worthing, Cray Wanderers, and Hornchurch and people like that, South Shields and all that, they've all got to stay where they are. I think it's, as you said, and Nick was, openly sort of spoke about the situation and said how many people might be coming up. I think there was talk of, if I'm right in saying, lads, if you've seen it, about 110, is it something like that? Promotions or restructures or upward movements, shall we say, whichever word you want to use, that's physically going to happen. And it's going to be done on the last 2 seasons, which I think that's the only issue. I think it could be restructured, but I think it's that thing of using those last 2 seasons where other people have been told, no, we can't do that. One club at Step Three's gone to court, lost £250,000 because of it, and all this sort of stuff. But then all of a sudden, as Keith said, we were told it wasn't going to happen, and then all of a sudden now it is going to happen. And it's I still feel that even maybe, if Norwich get up or Norwich miss out, or yourself, Jay, go up with hashtag, and then all of a sudden, no, you miss out or whatever else. How are you guys going to feel? Hang on a minute, what's going on here? Why? Well, surely we should be going up here. What's going on?
I mean, my big issue in all of it was the null and void of last season, the 1920 season, because I just thought it was too hasty to null and void and then use the word expunge, regardless of whether those results were ever going to be used again. They should have stood on record because they happened and they existed. And, we've got guys who, Steve, I don't know, but does that mean the goals that your centre forward scored don't count all of a sudden, and the wins, they didn't happen? And that was my big issue with it. And if they had sat on that, even, or left the results in existence, we could have continued last season. We played 26 league games last season, and then this season that's just been curtailed, we've played 12. Now, we would have a 34-game season normally, so we've played 38 league games over the course. They could have just finished the fixture. There could have been a decision made to restart that season. And I've heard arguments such as, change of playing personnel and change of management. This is non-league football. Some clubs go through 3 or 4 managers a season, 80, 90 players a season. There's a constant.
Not at the moment they don't.
But when it's being played, and there's a constant change in it. I just didn't understand the argument about there's a change of playing personnel or a change of management. And we could have just completed. We could have even finished off the fixtures that were outstanding and almost double counted them in some way. We're going to play a full season, but your first, for argument's sake, 10 fixtures will be against the teams that you haven't played from last season. Therefore, if we find ourselves in a position where this season doesn't complete, we can take a full season's results, if you like, where you've played every team twice, just using the first however many fixtures of this season that weren't completed on the back of last. And they would almost have those. In our case, it would have been 10 fixtures. Might have had a double meaning. They might have meant nothing to last season and just this if we completed this season, or if this season, as it wasn't completed, it would just be added to last season's total, and you've got a full season of fixtures. I personally, I think that could have been done. For whatever reason, it wasn't. And I know there's going to be arguments 2 and 4. The restructure, I look at it, of course, purely from a selfish point of view in terms of our own experiences as a club. And if someone says to me, you don't deserve to go up based on your playing record, I will confidently argue that we do. We've taken 96 points from 38 games. We have we've accumulated more points than anybody else. So even the points per game thing comes into it in our division. And I'm happy that if we were to be offered to apply, if our application was successful, I would sleep easy knowing that we've earned it.
I mean, someone's come in and said that teams this season therefore started off 15 to 20 points behind because their season 19-20 wasn't as good.
But nobody knew that, David. That would be my. If we were going into this season and everyone was saying that's gonna be the case, then you would have had all sorts going on. There would have been dodgy postponements to protect the points per game. We all went into this season thinking this season was starting afresh. You couldn't take it over 10, 12 games. That's impossible.
No, that's the thing that gets me, Jay. I said, and I've got, like I said, whatever happens to any club, they go up. Like you said, you people have got to take it. But when you null and void and expunge a season, that's gone. You can't now go back to it because otherwise, like I said, South Shields can now go back to the FA with their lawsuit and go,
Yeah.
I want my money back.
And personally, sorry, mate.
Go on,
But
mate, go on.
I agree that, you know, step 3 and 4, this upward movement, why should it stop at step 5 to 4? You know,
Yeah.
I'm fully the relegation bit, I'm not so sure about, because I think if you can provide a scenario where people are rewarded for good performance, but not punished for poor, because it's not, you kind of can say, well, you reward him, but without punishing, you know, unfairly. And I know there's going to be some slight anomalies in terms of, I think, Steve, your situation is probably one where this season was particularly, you had a really great start, didn't you? That kind of brought you right up into the picture compared to last, and there'd be some clubs that would be vice versa on that. But what do you take it from? Because for me, a third year of no movement whatsoever and it being static, that's dangerous. That's dangerous for clubs.
It might be, Jay, but it's the only fairest way. If you look at, because I think, like the null and void thing, this will bring bad blood between clubs across the board again. Why have they gone up? Why ain't we? We should be doing this. And it's just because the FA decide that's what they want to do. It's like when they decided, you know, everyone's point of view. Yet if they hung on and to what you said, kept them results or whatever, or didn't expunge them, then you could do something. But they're just to me opening up a massive can of worms. Yet there is restructure needs to be done, but no one did know we was going to have 2 years of a pandemic. So the easiest way for me was to wait another year. What happens
if we go into lockdown again next year, and how long do you wait? And I'd actually think it would do more damage to clubs in the long run. I mean, the women's football, I know they're kind of nervous about using the word precedent, but last year they were null and voided and then still had upward movement, didn't they?
They did. And again, from my point of view, I'd say wrongly so. But like I said, I just think the FA are just going to open up a huge can of worms. And I really, and not for the teams actually fulfilling them spaces, because there are a lot of great clubs like both of yours and other clubs around the leagues as well. But, you know, for me, there's the northern sides are going to, but obviously, there's more northern sides going to be promoted, which is right, because obviously they're filling that northern side. But now there's going to be, Dave, and you said about could Harlow move, there's going to be sideward movements, upward move. There's going to be some clubs put in the North Division that have got to do a hell of a lot of travelling now from either an Eastern or whatever, that are going to go, well, hold on a minute, what's going on here?
Isn't the idea of the restructure to reduce travelling overall?
It's meant to.
I thought that was the primary aim of it.
It is meant to, but basically now that because obviously, say there's going to be a couple of sides from what we call Kent that are going to go up now, that obviously are going to be pushed into the South Eastern Division. So the South Eastern Division are going to have to lose 2 clubs that are going to have to go into the South West or the South Central. Now we're going to have to go into the Northeastern, or whatever they're going to call it. So there is going to be some clubs that are going to be worse off for it. Definitely, it's going to be back to
there's definitely always going to be winners and losers in every situation, isn't there?
Yeah.
I think the big issue for me is, you know, it's an unprecedented situation. So I think we have to accept that people in charge, leagues, they have to make decisions, and not everyone's going to benefit from them decisions. My big bone of contention with the FA largely is just the lack of transparency. We don't know what's going on, and we are now in April. If they were hell-bent on a restructure, which I personally believe they are, and I think they would have done it last year, and I don't think they had any intention of letting it go beyond this year, they should have said at the start of the season, no matter what happens, if we have more lockdowns or any permutations that come up, we will be restructuring. Now, the solutions that we can come up with are many, and we will involve clubs in that process, but we will be restructuring. I think at least then everybody going into that knows that it's going to happen. We don't necessarily know who and how, but at least we're comfortable with, we know it's coming, and you can kind of prepare yourself for that. I think they've got another just one more. I think they've got another issue in that Jay said about relegation. I think you've got some clubs in the structure that need to be relegated because their their performances, their budgets, and you know how that can change at a club, just means they have to restart again and they have to drop down to a level where they can be competitive. And I think if they say across the board, no relegation, I think they're hanging some clubs out to dry.
Mm.
No, like I said, I agree. And if they want to, I think it might have sat with me a little bit better if, why didn't they do the restructuring last year? Because, as Jay said, we played nearly 3/4 of the season. You can't tell me people at the FA don't, are not connected with the government. They know what the scientists, I think Jay, Steve, you knew we was only going to play a part of last season, a very minimal. We all knew the season we was going to come, we was going to get a massive second wave. I think everybody knew that. There'd be some clubs going, well, we budgeted for that. We knew that. That could be a get out, but if they would have done it last season, so you would have played it and gone, whatever happens, we're restructuring anyway. I think it might have sat a little bit better. And then them clubs at step 3 or whatever that done what they done, or even at step 4, would have been included in it as well.
Well, it would have done because they'd have had the data to support it. Simple as that.
Yeah.
And I think they were very, very rash in the terminology they did with null and void. That they've definitely run it past solicitors this time, but I'm not thinking they did last time, because if you're a lawyer advising them, you would say, look, these are the options to give you the most options. What they did by using that terminology was close down, in my opinion, lots of their options and leave themselves open to legal challenge later down the line.
I mean, I don't know if any of you guys have seen it. I don't know if it was on Facebook or Twitter. I was just having a quick look to see if I could find it. There was like a graph that somebody had drawn up of, working on what they're supposed to be working on, who would get promoted, what division people might be in, etc., etc. And I know I definitely saw #United on there, and I'm sure I saw Norwich on there as well in one of those leagues. But I think, as Nick was saying, and a bit what Keith said, then there's going to be certain teams that are going to come up. If that's the likes of Sheppey, or if it's Corinthians, or if it's Chatham or whatever, that will go into the South East Division. Then there's going to be 2 or 3 clubs got to go into the South Central Division, and there might be teams that like # that might go into the North Division, that people are going to have to be shifted into the South Central. And then all of a sudden you're going to have like a pot of about 6-7 teams that don't fit in the South East, don't fit in the South Central, and don't fit in the North. So where they're going to go? He actually said to me, I don't know if it was on air or off air, he actually said to me that at one stage Harlow could have gone into the Northern Premier Southern League. Do you know what I mean? Do you know, it's like, wow. Do you know what I mean? But it's just that sort of jigsaw puzzle of actually moving it all about to actually get stuff to fit.
See, what I'd like, Dave, and Jay and Steve, it's mostly a question for both of you, is that where they're saying is that, you can apply to be moved up, and obviously you don't have to take it. We mentioned a club earlier, Steve, that are connected with you. Are they going to tell you what division you're going in before? Because I wouldn't
have thought so.
No,
I wouldn't expect them to, because I think, and this is the thing with restructures and lateral movements, that whenever the restructure happens, that's going to take place, isn't it? And I think I would expect that they're saying is that as a one-off, you can decline promote, because promotion's compulsory now, isn't it? They introduced that because of historically teams would, be at the top of their step 5 divisions and would refuse promotion, and would quite happily being strong in that level of football and target VARs runs, etc. And so they made it compulsory. The fact that they've taken that element away, I think, is more to do with clubs saying, well, actually, because of the situation, the pandemic, we don't feel prepared to go up. So they get that option, and then that will bounce down. But I think it would be an error to say, this is a division. If you accept promotion, this would be the division we put you into, because that would change. That could change, couldn't it? If we were told you are, for argument's sake, you're going into Isthmian North if you apply, and we apply, but actually Norwich United, who would have been put in another league, decline, which means another team takes the place and bumps us out. There would be, I think they've got to know who's moving upwardly before they decide who's going to be placed where, because I think that would be a mistake.
I mean, Anthony Mercer's come in and said teams like Cambridge, Histon and Soham could really suffer as they they would get moved to the Northern League to accommodate the likes of hashtag Walthamstow, Norwich, and Stowmarket.
But that would happen anyway, wouldn't it?
Well, see that now. See that but the actual table.
The only way it wouldn't happen is if it wasn't restructured. So if they're going ahead with a restructure, whenever it gets restructured, you're going to get movement. That's it's like the year that Bishop Stortford, or the 2 years seasons that Bishop Stortford had to spend in the National League North.
Yeah, I remember the same.
There's a huge disparity, isn't there, between the North and South clubs, and so I think what we're talking about is, as Southern-based clubs, there being more travelling, but this restructure is about, I think, creating less travelling for the Northern clubs, and for that to happen, I think the knock-on effect of that is that overall there's less travelling, but it means some clubs in the South are maybe out in on their own, if you like, in terms of.
I think with the restructuring, I do agree with what you're saying, Joe, but some of these teams will have the argument. One will be, well, teams haven't done anything to get promoted properly if you go on the points, and also their restructuring will change because teams being relegated coming down as well will maybe push the balance. So you could have, for instance, from the Eastern and North Prem, you've got the teams from the Northern Prem coming down, which would also fill free spaces into the new Northern League, but that's not going to happen. So 3 of them teams that would have come down into that could be them 3 teams that are now got to go over to it.
But all that means, Keith, is that it's a different 3 clubs effective if there's a movement.
Well,
so
yeah, not necessarily, because
you can't guarantee it wouldn't be you.
Well, no, but you could, because you'd say it is them 3 teams. Them 3 teams would come out of the Northern Premier League.
Yeah.
And go into it, but they're not going to be coming into it because there's no relegation from there. So it will be 3 teams from somewhere else that are going to have to, which will be from one of our leagues or the Southern. So that is what they're going to be saying. Them 3 clubs that we could mention, Harlow. It is going to depend on obviously who accepts and how they restructure it. But there's going to be too many South teams for that not to happen. Whereas, like I said, if it definitely would have had relegation from step 3, that would have opened up a different ball game a little bit.
So where does that sit with managers then? That you sit down and you might have a conversation with your chairman. We might have a chairman coming on in a minute. The chairman from Sheppey might join us in a second. But you sit down and you have a chat with your chairman. Your chairman tells you your budget for the season because he thinks that hashtag are going into the North League and Norwich are going into the North League or wherever it might be, and you're going into there and you think, oh great, that's not a bad budget for a first go at the Isthmian, this time round, great, just go for it. And then you go to the AGM, the virtual AGM, and all of a sudden you're not in the North League, you might be in the South Central or it's a long shot, but like the South East or something like that, and all of a sudden that completely changes to where you've got to travel. Would you then expect the chairman to call you back in for another meeting and go, hang on a minute, especially like we just said about Harlow, if you was in the South Central division and then all of a sudden the AGM comes out and you're in the Northern South division, that's a lot more travel, a lot more money to pay out for getting players to wherever you need to get them to. Would you expect then that your chairman would come in and say, well, look, we were going to give you, I don't know, and I don't know what wages are, so we was going to give you $2,000 a week for wages, but you're only going to get 1,500 now or 1,200 now because we need that extra money to travel to wherever it might be.
Well, it has to come from somewhere, and if there's going to be no subsidy for clubs that might have to do travel, which beyond what their expectations would be within a restructure, and the FA may look at something like that for a limited period of time, the money has to come from somewhere. So it's not a.
How's this scenario, Dave? And how would you both feel? Sorry to cut across, Jay. Say you're, let's say, Malden and Tiptree, okay, that basically should have got promoted to step 3 easily, done really, really well for the last 2 years, haven't got promotion, and all of a sudden they're going to get moved into the Northern Division. How would you feel there? You'd go mad, wouldn't you? Not only they're going to lose gate revenue because of, obviously, the supporters aren't going to come down from the north. We've had that with Bishop. I think Bishop Stortford proved that. Now you've got extra travelling. I just think it's, and I know restructuring could do it, but if it was done properly, it wouldn't. So not only you missed out on promotion, now you could be moved somewhere else, more expense, and it's just a big lottery. And I also think you're going to have to. I think, Dave, what will happen? There'll be a lot of teams that will be appealing this as well. Not like either not that they're not going up. If the way the FA, and I think Steve said it mostly rightly, they've got their own barristers anyway. They know exactly where they stand. You can't challenge the FA. You very rarely win. But there'll be a few clubs that will delay the process. And I think just if they had said it at the beginning, no matter what, we are definitely going to do this restructuring, and this is what's going to happen, and it's going to be fair across the board. I don't, then, and if you do get put there, there's something you're going to have to do. But to me, it just seems like, oh, they've just gone, do you know what? Sod 85% of clubs in non-league football, we're just going to do what we want. It will benefit some, and there are steps 7, 6, and 5 that need restructuring a bit better. But where it comes into the nitty gritty, I think they've just gone like it or lump it.
And where, I suppose, realistically, the biggest club to pick, I know you picked more than Tiptree, but where would probably be a better example, would it? I mean, because they've been backwards and forwards from division to division for almost the last sort of 5 or 6 years, haven't they? The Southern League, back to the Eastern, back to the Southern. They've been backwards and forwards all the time.
Yeah, there's clubs that are on borders, aren't there, that are forever at the mercy of the promotion and relegation picture, because depending on who comes up. And I suppose that's my point about it is that's the restructure. When it happens, that's going to happen. So that it's going to happen to some clubs. It's just, it used to be, it was always, I mean, Keith, you for yourself at Thamesmead and VCD, you were on the border, weren't you, of being in the Isthmian South or the Isthmian North. And, there's always those kind of clubs, I suppose. It's geography, isn't it? It's just kind of where you're unfortunately placed.
Yeah,
but I just think whenever that restructure happens, you're going to get people feeling hard done by. The point about your Malden and yeah, they deserve to go up, and I don't think anyone. I'm certainly not disputing that. This isn't. I think it's. And you talk about, the clubs that really have benefited for me are the ones that were at risk of relegation and are not being relegated 2 years on the trot.
And that's what I'm saying, and that's what's going to sit them 3 clubs in that Northern Division. There are going to be the clubs that are going to suffer for that. Like I said, the restructuring is the restructuring, and you're right. When we was in Thames, I actually quite like going in the North, to be honest. I prefer it in the South East. But that's not as bad. Well, I think when you actually got to go, like even when the teams got moved over to the South Central, Dave, and Harlow was one of them, and I think Barking was one, and people like, it wasn't a huge difference. It was quite a bit, but not massively. But I think I know what's going to happen now, Dale. I've been looking. There's teams that were in the South East, like Chichester and that might go in the South Central now, which may help. But then, it's just a little bit of an up and down. But like I said, to me, it's more of just it's no having to go at any club, and that's what I think is going to happen. I think people will start having a bit more bad blood, like they did with the points per game thing. Some wanted it, some didn't. Then clubs are arguing between themselves, and it's all been brought down by the FA. It all should have been sorted out from day one. When we kicked the ball last year, we knew what was happening. We knew what was going to happen if the season didn't finish. We knew what was going to happen at the end of the season, that with restructuring, but we haven't. We're in this situation again where people are just going, oh, well, thanks, cheers, I'm going to put there. And don't get me wrong, we're going to come on to both your clubs in a minute. And it is a big bonus. It is a big bonus, but for a lot of clubs, I don't think it is.
Just so everybody, just so if we go, we just had a text, and DT said he'll be with us in about 10 minutes. But just one question quickly before I forget, away from the restructuring, because I know by the time I get to the end of this show tonight, I'll have forgotten to ask Keith this one question. What's your thoughts on Nick Blue out and Sam Mott in?
Oh.
Dave, me and Sam Mott are really good friends. You know this anyway. We're good mates, and I spoke to Sam beforehand. So, and I wish him the best. It's quite interesting that obviously I tried to sign Sam for the last 3 seasons when I was at VCD and was told, no, can't afford him. So that was different. Listen, both of them. Bluey is a lovely fellow, and I enjoyed my time with Nick and in my last year, and he was really good. and understanding then he was struggling a little bit work-wise. He's just had another new baby as well, and obviously Motty's got a baby on the way as well. So it's worked out perfectly. Sam is really local to VCD as well, and the travelling, was umming and ahhing over the last 2 years. He's a great goalkeeper, and obviously he's playing with a lot of his friends there now, with Ashley, obviously Lee Dawson, Jack Hopkins, and they're all close knit people. So, I wish Sam all the best. Was a surprise now. I thought it was going to happen anyway. But on the other side, I think I can talk for most VCD people as well. Nick Blue's been a tremendous servant to the club, even when he left with Tony to go to Cray. His family are massive to VCD as well. And by all accounts, I still hear rumours that he'd done a bit of an announcement the weekend and was quite emotional about leaving. But Nick still wants to play football, but I do think he's struggling to commit to the midweek as well as the Saturday. And to be fair, if you're a club of VCD, why not get who I would call one of the best goalkeepers in non-league football, and a good friend of mine as well in his place. Any club, it's a massive loss for Ashford. Anyone, Hornchurch, if you looked at his record, someone put now he's kept the most clean sheets at the club history, and that's the club at that level. He's an England B cap. So what a goalkeeper.
Very diplomatic
answer.
Asking
me that question. Thanks for asking me that question. Yeah. Asked me 6 months ago, I'd have gave you a completely different one, trust me.
But in all fairness, before we go back to Simon, we've Steve. We just had come across here on one of the top headlines here saying Liverpool boss Jurgen Klopp stands by his opposition to the European Super League and says that him and his players were not involved in the plans. So there you go. But Steve, all yours. Sorry, mate. We've interrupted you there.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say you asked a question from a manager's point of view. What impact does it have? Certainly, and you alluded to budgets. More so than budget for me is just recruitment of what players might be available. And often when you're looking at, particularly where we are in Norfolk, we have quite a small pond to fish in anyway. So the knowing in a good enough time, if it was to happen and we were to get promoted, knowing that there might be 2 or 3 clubs that perhaps we could go and sign some players from, but being in a position to do that early enough is critical, because that literally most of your business is done within a 4-week window. And if you're not clear on your targets from our point of view, if we're not clear on our targets now, then we act too late, we miss out.
Do you expect to go into the North Division, Steve, if you do get accepted in?
Yeah, well, I've seen the same document that you mentioned, and we were in that. And then when they announced the news last week, my understanding of that was it was only going to be one team, which based on the combined data would be Stowmarket. Wroxham were top this year, so in a points per game situation, we were second in both of those. So if it is first and second, then whatever data they use, we would be the second place team. And if we were offered it, yeah, we would have to take it. I mean, for me personally, I don't see any point in a team. That's what you do. You play to get promoted. Well, is it the way I'd like to get promoted? Of course not. I'd like to be able to do it on the pitch and celebrate with the players and the fans and have all the joy that comes with that. But if you're offered it, you have to take it.
So if Stowmarket then said they didn't want to come up, and all of a sudden they found out it was 2 teams coming up from your division, would that mean it was you and Wroxham coming up, or was it?
I think it would, yes, because I mean they were 11 straight wins going into the lockdown, and I think they finished the season before. I think they were 4th. So yeah, I think they would finish 3rd in on that basis.
And what about your league, Jay? Is it you and Walthamstow?
Yeah, I think we're ahead of. I think it's us and Walthamstow, then Hadley over the course of the past 2 seasons. Yeah, and it's interesting. We played Walthamstow the last game of last season just before it locked down, and that probably swung it in our favour.
And obviously with their new management being announced with Terry Spillane and obviously John Mackey in the week as well.
Yeah.
So it's good. So, but with both of you, gents, obviously with the news, and it's obviously news that you both want. So, let's turn what may seem quite negative from where I'm coming from into a massive positive, and this is what we're talking about. Obviously, two teams at step 5 that have, and I know that for you, Steve, your club's been in the Eastern League. Obviously, Jay, your new club, and in terms of history-wise. You've done a fantastic job as well. You had the FA Cup run, as what we see. We watched it on live streaming ourselves. I did. Just tell us what a buzz that's been in the last week or so, knowing that this might happen for either of your club.
I think if anyone at our club asked you about the buzz, they would tell you how miserable I am and refusing to get carried away. Because until it's done, until I see a league constitution with our name in it in black and white, then I'm not getting carried away, because we're only talking about one part of the process here. What we don't know is what the requirements are going to be, the additional requirements, because they're talking about it being an application process. So we don't know. We don't know exactly. They've not said. So, until, assuming that we get the email, I think next Monday they're due to, the invites are due to go out. Assuming we get that, we don't know what the criteria is to be met. And until we know that, then it's difficult to, but I would say around the rest of the club, yes, there's excitement. There's excitement that feels a little surreal, a little strange. There was an initial buzz, the thought that it was, was possibly going to happen, and now I think it's just a case of people are realising that actually there's not a lot of point getting carried away until we know. I think I saw a couple of clubs announce that they were, in line for promotion, which I thought was a little. Had gone a little bit early on it, but I think that gives a sense that of it's not just that there's been no football, so you're coming back, so it's almost like the double boost, isn't it? But I'm not getting carried away. I don't know about Steve, but I'd suggest he's probably feeling the same way.
Well, yeah. I mean, even worse with our situation in that we are that second.
Yeah.
So, if we were top, or then I think that would have at least it would have made planning a little bit easier. But I'm the same as you, Jay. Until that is, we are told a league AGM that we're in that division, then I take it with a pinch of salt. And that's sad, but I just think there's been so much change, so much. This is going to happen, then it's not going to happen. You hear this and that, and it's all. I'd rather hear nothing, and then they categorically go, "This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. This is who's going to benefit from it. This is the criteria." So it's just comprehensive, so everyone knows where they are. Because all that happens in between is, well, is it you? Are you going up? Are we going up? No. And everyone then works out their own little system for it as well.
I think
Go on, Jay.
Sorry, in fairness to them, I think the time scales that they've put out are fair and reasonable. It's not like an 8-week. It's going to feel like 8 weeks, but I think final decisions meant to be 3 or 4 weeks from now, and they're allowing time for applications and appeals and things like that. I think if we're told, I think I'm led to believe it's around about the 17th of May final decisions are made. That's only a couple of weeks later than you would know at the end of the season if you took it to the final day, and actually earlier than it could have been if they had extended the season to June. So as everybody's kind of, and I've been one of the people to be very critical of the whole scenario. It does at least feel now like they're moving with some idea of. In my head, it's like, well, I know that we'll know by the 17th.
I do get that, Jay, what you're saying, but for me, I'm looking at that when they announced that they were restructuring, they should have announced the exact what they were doing. And you knew what could be happening. Right, there's 2 up. This is going to be doing it. We're going to actually do it exactly then. I know what you're saying. They are moving a little bit, but in 4 weeks' time, you'll know what you can, if you can apply. it's only applicants. It's not as though like the season had finished. You know who's going.
That's a
up,
week,
no
though,
reason.
isn't it? No, we know in a week whether we can apply.
Yeah,
we will know the final outcome in 4 weeks.
And then and obviously then you've got that happening in 4 weeks' time. Then you're going to mostly have appeals. There's going to be restrictions. So it's, to me, I still think people's AGMs, which are normally the first week of June. I know, I don't even think you wouldn't be able to have an AGM still until I think the end of June anyway. So, but for me, it's still lastminute.com. I think it could be for what league you're going to go in. Dave just said it exactly after appeals. I still think there's going to be a lot of clubs that are still going to go, oh, hold on, we could have a bit of an issue here. I just thought they could have gone, like you said, they've had so long to sort all this out. They knew the year before what was going to happen with a restructuring anyway.
Have they categorically said that there'll be no relegation, or will clubs be able to apply for relegation?
Well, they did say there was no relegation, but they did also tell us that there was going to be no restructuring.
Yeah,
they did.
Nick
really,
said,
I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, Nick actually said last Wednesday there's no relegation. Yeah.
But Steve made a really good point earlier about clubs that would benefit from being relegated. Now, I don't think there's any managers that would agree with that in terms of, but there will be clubs out there that maybe feel that they need to go down to reset and come back up. And that, I'm surprised that wasn't offered as an option, where there was the option for clubs to not take an upward movement.
So in your leagues, then, so you're in your leagues, then, Joe. How many do you know are coming up from the Essex Senior League? I mean, it's Steve said that it's only one. He thinks it's only one from his league. Is it only one from your league, or is it two?
My understanding, it's one, because I think only the Northern leagues have got three, haven't they? I think there's three of the Northern leagues have got three going up, and then all the other leagues at Step 5, there's one. And then there's the issue of whether if the team in graded first decline that opportunity, then it will move down to 2 and then 3. I don't know what will happen if all 3 of those teams say no, whether that space is then offered across.
You might end up with clubs relegated and promoted. Sorry, did you hear me?
No, just missed it. Broke up a little bit. Yeah, go on.
I said you might end up, if they go that far down, clubs that should have got relegated getting promoted.
yeah.
They could end up with.
We've had Mark Morsey come in, and obviously we all know Mark, and he's basically gone. And the problem is that the FA and the Isterman League will let bits of info slip out, but they will not make any decisions in good time. I have heard end of May, early June, and that is too short notice for some clubs. And obviously, Steve, you'll know Mark.
I know Mark well. Well, I would agree with him if that is the time frame, because I think Jay made a point about when a normal season would finish. But the problem is, we've had 3 months of doing nothing. So I've already got managers that have been texting me a month ago talking about pre-season friendlies for next year. And I'm saying, provisionally, yes, but don't know when we're going to start. Don't know what league we're going to be in. But yes, you're definitely on the radar. The planet, when we're not playing football, we don't just... not just shutting off, the cogs are still turning and the planning process is going. So you're right, where we would have typically finished the season. But in my head, I've already been planning pre-season for the last 6 weeks.
And obviously, if you knew you was going to get promoted, you'd be looking at different players. You'd be looking at different fixtures. And obviously, like you said, different budgets. Again, I suppose, all that gets blown away if you do get promoted. I don't think the club would care too much, unless financially you couldn't afford it, and then you wouldn't apply anyway.
Yeah, I think the boost, if you like, of getting promoted you can overcome those obstacles because you've got that lift. I think having to wait that late and then finding out that you're not would be far more damaging than the other way round, because you've then got to almost pick the whole club off the floor.
Well, in that process, Jay, and obviously, I know yourself and the contacts but are you talking to sort of players at the moment thinking, right, am I talking to my old team because we could still be in the league? Obviously, you both know, and Joe, that if you do go up, you're both going to need to strengthen some way, but you can't strengthen and get players in on the understanding we could be promoted because, they could be looking elsewhere. So could you either lose out on players because of some clubs are already speaking to them?
There's every chance, but we all know, listen, there'll be clubs now that think they've done deals with players. We've all been through that pre-season where, and we see it every year, don't we? The clubs announce a signing, and then the following week another club's announced them, because I actually think a lot of players will sit tight just because they've been so long without playing football. I think there's just going to be uncertainty everywhere, regardless of whether you're a club that's moving or not. But we're not in a position to confirm anything with anyone really, apart from existing players.
Players you want to retain as well. I mean, I've got one or two that if we were stay put, I would develop and come on another season. I think if we were to go up, that bar might be a little bit too much for them. So you've then got the conversation of, well, we'll retain you, but we're going to maybe look to get you out on loan, or we're just not able to retain you. So there's a knock on of all of those conversations in and out the door, plus with players that you maybe want to sign, crudely from competitors that if we go up, that we can have them conversations. If we stay put, we probably can't. And of course, money plays a factor in that, but also if you're speaking to players that are ambitious and want to play that next step, you might not even be on an option for them.
Well, I've just had that grid, the new grid that someone's put together in the last week, thanks to Donna, has literally just sent it over to me. So this is where she's got with step 4. So we'll just go through Isthmian leagues first. So she's got Isthmian League Division 1 Central. He's AFC Dunstable, Aylesbury United, Barton Rovers, Bedford Town, Biggleswade, Chalfont St Peter, Colney Heath, FC Romania, Hanwell Town, Harlow Town, Hertford Town, Kempston Rovers, Kidlington, Marlow, Northwood, Tame United, Uxbridge, Walthamstow, Waltham Abbey, Walthamstow, and Welling Garden City. The Division 1 North, Sudbury, Aveley, Barking, Basildon, Brentwood, Bury, Canvey, Coggeshall, Dereham, Felixstowe, Grays, Great Wakering Rovers, Hashtag United, Haybridge, Hull, Norwich United, Romford, Stowmarket, Tilbury, and Whittam.
And put 2 up from that league, then.
Yeah, and then in the south,
I think this was prior to the FA announcement, though, wasn't it? This was done.
It was.
I'll say this, and then south is Ashford, Burgess Hill, Crumphian, Cray, East Grinstead, Faversham, Guernsey, Haywood Heath, Herne Bay, Hivetown, Lancing, New Haven, Phoenix Sports, Ramsgate, Sevenoaks, Sheppey, Sittingbourne, VCD, Whitehawk, and Winsford Town. And then some of our clubs that are in our league at the moment then move to the Southern Football League 1 East, which is Ashford Town, Bracknell Town, Chertsey Town, Chichester, Chipstead, South Park, Staines, Three Bridges, Tooting and Mitcham, Westfield, Whiteleaf, would according to this would go over to the Southern Football League 1 East.
That's what I mean, David. But Jay said that was prior to the thing, and that's with 2 going up. Which
and it's also got things. I think did I hear Barking and Romford in different divisions, and I'd be surprised if that happens.
Yes, and
ground sharing.
I did, and I actually asked. I don't know if you heard. I actually asked Nick that question. Why it was they were in separate leagues, and he basically turned around and said it was too late to actually shift them across. So this time round, of course, it's going to be a case of, well, if they're both playing in the same league, same place, then they've got no option, have they? They've got to. They've both got to go into South Central because that's where Barking are, and so it's Barking's home ground, and it's you'd assume that's where they've got to go. Just for everybody that is wondering, there's another young man just appeared on our screen, and Matthew, and of course, if I'm right in saying Matthew, the chairman at Sheppey.
Yes, that's correct. For my sins.
So just so you know who's with us, we've got as I'm looking at my screen, top left-hand corner, he's Jay, the manager of #United. To my right, he's my co-host Keith McMahon. And then on the bottom next to you is Steve from Norwich United with us as well. We're just literally in the process of talking about the restructure and where people might go if they get up, and whether they would take it and take the option of going up. So with Sheppey as the chairman, would you take the jump up if it was offered?
Yes, 1,000,000% yes. But I think unfortunately he's only going to be one up from the SCEFL again, which is always disappointing. I still find it strange that the SCEFL is only ever allowed one up season on season. It just seems crazy to me. Given how strong that league is, I think most of you people know how strong that league is this year and last year.
Well, it's 2 in the Bards final a couple of years ago, wasn't it? So yeah. So I mean, where do you actually sit in that? What number would you be? 1, 2, 3, 4? Where would you be in that sort of line?
On the points per game, we would be second. So I was fingers crossed and everything else hopeful that it may well be 2 up, but I think I'm 99.9% sure now it's just 1 up, and it's up to Corinthians to apply for their license for Step 4 football and go from there, really.
And Dave, I'll just explain, obviously, because I'm a Kent boy as well. So the difference between the 2 clubs, okay? Corinthians, as everyone knows, obviously have been, working, so to say, for years on. They don't play any players at all. Obviously, they come through their sort of history of the Billings. I've known them. I played for them years ago when they were in the Eastern League. And obviously, maybe get crowds, and Matthew might tell me differently there, of around maybe 80, 90, maybe a bit less. Where obviously Sheppey, again, going back in the history, we're a big club. Matthew, if I'm right, you get gates of around 400 or 500, don't you?
We have done. I think our average for the season before last, that never was about 280, 290 is our average. But if we get big derbies and bigger games, we easily touch 400, 500s easily. And I think the sooner we get into Step 4 football, the better, because there is the likes of Faversham, Sittingbourne, the big derbies for us. And that's what we need. And that's what we need for the supporters. And that's part of the master plan, is putting down the 4G to enable the money generated from that 4G, unfortunately, to go straight into the playing budget to take us to that next level. And because unfortunately, football at every level is all about money if you want to get promotion. Well, from what I've ever seen.
Yeah, so, go on, Dave.
I was just going to say, so I mean, next season, if he was unlucky and you had to stay down in the SCEFL League, I mean, is it the likes of Chatham that will be your biggest sort of challenges in there?
Yes. I think, but you never know. You don't know what other team decides to come along and throw money at it. There's a few in there that I think will be challenging as well. Tunbridge Wells are always there or thereabouts. You've got Glebe, Beckenham, obviously, were second the season before last. There's some real big hitters, and I think if you were a betting man, you'd be betting between us and Chatham next year. And I don't mean to sound blasé by that. I think, if you look at the stats, that's how it's going to be. But yeah, it's going to be a tough with us and Chatham in there, definitely, because Chatham have spent well, and do you know what I mean? They've got some very, very good players in there. Jack Evans being the pick for me.
Matthew,
so would you say
just quickly? Good. Sorry, Dave. Matthew, just obviously, you hear a lot of rumours, and as I try to explain about Corinthian, I would say out of all the leagues, they could be one of the clubs that I might be wrong here, that might not take promotion because of their situation, and obviously with the finances. Have you heard any rumours at all?
No, I would be very, very, very surprised if they don't do it. And all I would say about this non-paying business is we went in for their goalkeeper, as was widely put in, and we made him a very, very good financial offer, but he chose to stay. And good on him if he isn't being paid at Corinthians. But if somebody offered me what we were offering him to train with us twice a week and play once a week, you've got to be quite a well-off person to turn something like that down, is all I'll say.
Well, Michael's going to join us next week because he couldn't make this week, so he's going to join us next week. So we'll find out when we're taking up. Yeah.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
I played from years ago, and it is a long time ago. If anyone knows me, but, and that was at a decent level when they were there, and they definitely didn't play there, but they did look after you in other ways. I will tell you that.
Yeah, well, yeah. You don't have to pay. You don't have to pay cold hard money to be paid to play, do you?
I don't know.
That's all I'll say.
So are you guys?
Go on.
So I was to say, are you guys though? I mean, it sounds like from what you three guys have said that it is going to be 1 up next year. Why? Why can't it be 2 up? Do you know what I mean? You know, why couldn't it be 2 up? You know what I mean? It's like, I just if you've got that powerhouse, because it seems to me, especially in the Scaffold League, and I can't speak so much, you know, in Scaffold League.
Isn't it?
But no, what I'm trying to say is like, why couldn't they sort of bring 2 up, maybe 1 down, whatever it might be? But because it seems to me when you look at the leagues, yeah, but when you see the leagues and you see the Scaffold League, and I'm not so much of a figure of Norwich's league, but you know, with the Essex League as well, there's like 2 or 3 powerhouses in the Essex League. There's 2 or 3 powerhouses in the Scaffold League, and from what we were talking about before, with the likes of you know, Wroxham in there as well, there's quite a few powerhouses in there as well. Would you say that some of the teams at step 5 are better than teams at step 4?
I think you get that at every level. I think you if you then go down to step 6, and so, you know, the top 4 or 5 would be really confident that they would be comfortable in the step 5 level. I just think that there's always that disparity. You've only got to look at, you know, Norwich are almost an anomaly this year by going straight back up, because you see teams drop out of the Premier and struggle in the Championship. I think that's a given. That's just the nature, and that's the difficulty with so few promotion places. I think the issue this time round about there not being more than 1 is the fact that there is no relegation, that we were speaking about earlier. Because there's no relegation, it's rewarding fewer, if you like.
Yeah, they're capped with what they can do. Once if they've ruled out relegation, then they are capped with the amount they can move. I would certainly have liked to seen in a restructure at least a playoff type scenario at our level, because I just think that keeps it more exciting. And I think when you do have a club who has resource out of nowhere and can throw money and get out of the league, I think for 2-3 teams that probably are good enough to get out, that's quite hard fighting for that in that 2nd, 3rd spot all the time. So I think I would have liked to see something like that develop.
Yeah, well, you can see somebody else has just joined us down in the bottom right-hand corner, and it's probably the calmest I've seen him for about a few days, especially after what's been going on higher up, shall we say. But so welcome to DT, of course, from DTFC. How are you, sir?
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. I'm calm. I'm all right. I don't know what to say at the moment.
It's just baffling, but
I should imagine he's just delighted that Arsenal have been considered a top 6 club again.
Hey, I'm still trying to work out how Tottenham are in it. That's the most confusing thing. But
because they finish above you the last 2 years, I think might be it.
Mate, look, do you know what? Just briefly on the subject with Arsenal, look, I want nothing more than to play Barcelona and Bayern Munich and all these teams again. But I want us to earn the right to play them. That's what I want. The reason why we were so excited about the win against Slavia Prague last week, we go into a semi-final, is because we're, you know, 1 step closer to the golden ticket, win the Europa League and you're in the Champions League. And then we can say, yeah, we deserve to be in there. But what's the point in being in a competition where you're just guaranteed to be in it? We can finish 10th, 11th, 12th, and we can sit there and say, oh, well, still be in that next year. It's fine. Get £350 million. Don't worry about anyone else. It just don't sit right with me. It don't sit right with me. I come from my whole family from Arsenal, right back to my great-granddad from Woolwich days. My family originate from Woolwich and Eltham. I've been going since the 86-87 season. It just don't sit right. Just fans are not considered in any way, shape or form. And I think it's wrong that media companies and all these organizations are jumping on their high horse as well, when they're just as much to blame for everything. They're very quick to, jump on statements and talk about punishments and what could happen if you leave. But then you don't hear anything from them when someone's racially abused or stuff like that. So you can get more of a ban for betting irregularities or missing a drugs test like Rio Ferdinand did than you can for being racially abusive to someone. So all the organizations are just as much to blame. The broadcasters, they're to blame when they decide, let's move a game to a Friday night or a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning or a Monday night. And Arsenal got to travel to Newcastle on a Saturday morning, and there's no consideration for fans that have got to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to travel, or come home late on a Monday night and they get in at 4 o'clock in the morning and they've got to go to work at 6, 7 o'clock. So don't sit there preaching about the fans now when none of you have cared about the fans. It was only a few months ago that they were trying to charge everyone $14.99 to watch Sheffield United v Burnley. Come on. Seriously, don't preach. Don't all get on your high horse when you're all as much to blame. The people that everybody should feel sorry for are the fans.
Absolutely. I mean, on our non-league side of it, though, DT. I mean, if your side's given the option of moving up, I mean, are you in that situation where you could get that opportunity to move up? And if so, would you do so?
Yeah, I'm dying to move up. Desperate. It's we've had to start from the bottom end and step 7, and look, our results speak for themselves this season. We're too strong for the level that is, and that's not being disrespectful, but we played 8 games, we've won all 8 games, we scored 47 goals. We've proven what we need to do at that level despite it being stopped. I think our first game of the season we won 11-0. We average 6 or 7 every week. And, we feel that we're not asking to jump into, the Essex Senior League or anything like that, but go into step 6. Let us go into a level that's a bit more competitive where we will have, some real challenges along the way. And let us, build ourselves and move up the table, accordingly. Let us earn our place on merit. So, and, obviously because of COVID, it's gave us a bit of an opportunity that we've been able to enter the Essex Senior League, Len Cordell Cup. And yeah, we look, we're very similar in terms of where we started to hashtag, because we were a YouTube team. And I've spoken to Spencer loads of times about, certain issues and barriers that you may face. And, there's people that kind of look down on us and don't really take us seriously. And even when we got into the ESL competition, I don't want to say ESL at the minute with this European Super League going on, because it seems I'm announcing that we're playing in the ESL Cup, and everyone seems to think like, yeah, we're going into this Super League. But even when we were entering that, and people looked at our group, we were put in the same group as Cockfosters, Hoddesdon, and St Margaret's-Bury. Everyone straight away was like, "Oh, you're going to get slapped. You're just going to get beat, and you're going to get exposed and found out." We're 2 games down. We're top of the group. So we drew with Cockfosters in the first game, and I'm still disappointed about that because we dominated them. And it took them scoring in the 96th minute to equalise that game. And then on Saturday, we beat Hoddesdon 2-0 with another very confident display. So we're just going about our business, trying to play football, trying to create a club. And it's not just, one team. We're building, we're trying to create something. We're trying to create something for a community as well. And we've got a reserve team next season. We've got a development team for 16 to 18-year-olds. And we're also in the talks with a ladies team at the moment as well. So it's about building for the future. And yeah, it's all happening very quick. But yeah, we're enjoying it. We've got good people behind us, and we're just enjoying the journey. But yeah, if we could get that move up, then so be it. If not, we'll have to stay where we are, do it, how they want us to do it, and win the league, and then we go from there.
Do you look at hashtag though, DT, with a bit of envy, like, you know, where they've got to already, and you know, with the possible with this restructure, they could be in the, you know, the Isthmian North next season as well.
Yeah.
I mean, is that something that you know, that you as a club yourself and the club are sort of looking at to aim for in the same sort of areas as what they've gone through the ranks?
I think our pathways are very similar of where we want to go, and it's what I like about hashtag this season, in particular with the FA Cup run that they went on, is that they're opening doors for teams like us. Because before hashtag did it, there was nobody that did it. There weren't, you know, even when hashtag got their game that was being screened on BBC, I saw all the comments. You know, oh, what's a hashtag? Who's this? Who's that? How have they got this? And I'm like, they've earned the right to get this. They've earned the right to be where they are. They're not a YouTube team anymore. People need to get past that, you know, that misconception that they're still a YouTube team. It's, you know, Spencer's not playing left back anymore. It's not what they used to be. They're a non-league club. Give them the respect they deserve. And, you know, those are the obstacles that I've started to meet along the way. And the benefit of having hashtag already there just means that they've...
DT, the good thing I think about, you know, yourself and hashtag, and I mentioned Jay before that I went and watched, well, under the radar were playing yesterday while my boys' teams were playing, is that we're in a sort of football at the moment where we're losing too many clubs. You know, my old club, Thamesmead's gone. We were talking about this the other day with clubs going out of business, but being with what hashtag have done and what you've done, it's actually helped generate a new football club, and you know, non-league football is desperate for new football clubs, and it is a good way for them to start and develop and get to where hashtag have in such a short period of time is only a good thing. It's only a good thing for football. It's one of the easier ways to do it. I know, obviously, Matthew's sitting there at Sheppey, and what happened to your club years ago, and you know, you had to start again, was more of a harder way. And obviously you had you know, the community behind you, but it is a good way to sort of build a football club and make it successful.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, as long as you've got the right people in the right positions that all follow the same ambition that you have. And, you know, I'm not going to be in charge and managing for much longer. And the team know this. We've got like a structure that we want to do and where we want to go. Now, I've got good coaches behind me. UEFA B coaches in the process of taking his UEFA A and everything else. FA licensed. I'm in the process of doing some courses as well and other things. And we've built a real good team behind us to get to what, you know, we want to achieve. And then eventually I'm just going to step down and I'm going to literally be the owner. And, you know, the footballing side of things, you can go and do that side of things. But what I want to build is just like I said, it's not just one team. I'm not just building this one team and we want to just try and go out there and do what we're doing by ourselves. We want to build like an entire community. We want to build a whole new fan base. We want eventually within the next 5 years, we want to have teams from under sevens going right up. We want to have all of that side of things. So the youngsters that are coming through, they're going to want to play for these, whether you're under sevens, under eights, nines, going all the way through. Development squad's very important for me because we're going to give them a pathway into the first team and seeing what non-league football's about. Some of them will have a bit of a culture shock, and some have already. When they've been stepped into this environment, they're like, whoa, hold on a minute. And they realise that there's certain players in certain positions that let you know they're there, shall we say, within the first 5 minutes. And when they're maybe playing at an academy, that doesn't happen. But it's all part of the process and part of what they're learning. And I just want to leave a legacy. I want to leave a team that's, you know, just going to be talked about from years and years from now. In the same way that I know Spencer wants to do with hashtag.
Jay, with yourself, obviously, you know, just with what you're saying there, you know, you've a respected person that's been at big clubs coaching, and I know you stepped over to take hashtag, but what was it that drew you to there? I'd
probably been working with the guys for 6 months before they announced me as the manager. And it was as simple as Spencer, when I was at East Thurrock, when I was assistant at East Thurrock, Spencer came in, and he was before his career took off really, but his dad was our physio, and he came in and he started to do a mini kind of documentary, and his idea was to follow us for the season. And East Thurrock, Keith, that kind of exposure wasn't something that we'd been used to, and Covo was like, yeah, it'd be great, it'd be good for the club, a little bit of exposure. He only did one or two before his work took off. I think he ended up going to working for Vincent Company or something like that. But I kind of kept an eye on what he was doing through his dad, Steve, and he'd tell us these stories that they were getting up to. And I was fascinated by it, because my son, who's nearly 16 now, I think he was like an 8-year-old kid obsessed with YouTube, and that was it. Once he had met Spencer, he kind of followed them right the way through. So he was always telling me what was going on. And I left East Thurrock just to, I think I'd probably in my mind had got to the point where I wanted to be the manager again. And I didn't have anywhere to go, but I knew that my time had come to an end. Brilliant 8 years at East Thurrock, but it just felt right to leave when I did. And that was, that would have been in the end of the previous season. And coming around the Christmas time, I got a message from Steve saying Spencer would like to speak to me. He asked me he said we're looking at going into semi-pro football. There's a new Step 6 league next season. It's an opportunity for us to apply. We've spoken with the FA. They've told us really that's the level we need to go into, because they've seen the crowds that we attract at the games, and so the facilities would need to be at a level where they could cope with that. Would you be interested? And I said no at first. I said I don't think I will, but I will come and take some sessions for you, because they'd only just started to train. And I think it was their first session. They had no one to take the sessions. So I'm not doing anything. I'll add some structure to your training sessions and help you out. And I got hooked. Just the enthusiasm of everybody involved. And he's a creator. So the ideas that he has about things, and it's just, it was new, it was fresh, it was interesting. And yeah, it kind of just went from there, mate.
Great. With Matthew, Steve, obviously, you're both, like I said, Matthew, I know Sheppy well. How do you feel when you see clubs like Hashtag and obviously now DT sort of really getting a lot of fans behind them and sort of getting, really a good bandwagon going forward?
Personally, I think it's a good thing. Football, like anything in life, has to evolve, and I think you can get good involvement, which this is an example of, and you can get bad involvement, which the last 24 hours have been an example of as well. But to keep tapping into the next generation of people and footballers, you have to do things slightly differently. You have to engage in a way that means something to them and where they are engaged. And social media has revolutionized everything. So it makes complete sense that football should tap into that, and that we should have clubs grow and be born out of that. And for me, that's just part of the evolution of the game.
You talk about fans, Keith, and obviously bringing a fan base, but actually our biggest crowds tend to be our away games, where we go in there as almost the one-off season visit, the once-a-season visit. When we were in Step 6, I'll give you an example. We played Benfleet at Canvey Islands ground, and they had 750 people there. East Thurrock were playing Dartford, who are a massive, massive club down the road, and they had just over 400. So Benfleet they were laughing. They'd never seen so many people come through. Our biggest crowd that season was something like 350. We went to Halstead and there were over 800 people there at Step 6 football. So way we see is that we're introducing a younger generation to all of non-league. It's not just us. So, if we go and play Norwich United away and it attracts a few other, a few youngsters to come down and watch because of, the novelty of us playing there, the chances are they're going to come back to Norwich United 2 or 3 times a season, maybe even more regular, and become regular supporters of it. And we actually know of supporters that have done that kind of thing. So for us, that's great. You haven't got to come and support us. If you're supporting the opposition, brilliant. That's great. But if we're helping introduce and I think on the whole we'd all agree the non-league support kind of traditionally has been an older kind of support, and to introduce young people to the game, I think that's kind of part of our.
The most important thing is getting that young generation to have affiliation within the game. As alluded to earlier, it's becoming, pandemic aside, it's becoming almost impossible to take a young supporter to a Premier League game. So if non-league and certainly National League and League One, League Two become more accessible, we are getting the next generation involved and in love with the game. That has to be of paramount importance.
Yeah, just touching on that quickly as well. Like, I've got 2 of my youngest sons, one's 5 and one's 10. And they've got so heavily involved in what I do now. They literally know every single player in the team. My 5-year-old will go out and I watch him in the garden, and he's gone from pretending he's a Premier League footballer scoring a goal to being Jake on the wing or Jermaine on the wing, and I watch him doing it and I'm like, what's he doing? And then I realize what he's actually saying. And then now he's like, Dad, can I get a DTFC kit? And I'm like, yeah, all right then. And then the 10-year-old, he's well into YouTube. He's at that age where it's all YouTube, everything. And it's like, yeah, my dad runs DTFC. Do you know? And then next thing, he's telling all these other youngsters, and then these kids are saying to their dad, oh, but Jack's dad runs this team. Can we go and watch them play football? They're on YouTube and X, Y, and Z. And that's how it all starts. And that's where it all spirals from. And, we had a final. It was a year ago at Harlow before we actually done the ground agreement with them. And that's obviously where it all started from. And I remember it was a Sunday night game. It was the only time, and it was before the first lockdown. And we had just over 750 came through the door on a Sunday night. And we was like, what on earth is happening here? And it was, so yeah, for us, we can't wait until we can actually start doing the fans through the turnstile type of thing and getting people involved and just trying to build something and not just for us, but for other teams. And, it's like Jay was saying, if you can get an extra couple of 100 people come down to, such and such's ground because, hashtag are playing there this weekend or DTFC are playing there this weekend, then all the merrier, because they're going to experience something. Even the last couple of weeks, because we've been announcing that we're playing in the Essex Senior League and we're playing Cockfosters, and we all know who they are. But like the younger generation are like, Cockfosters? Like, it's a bit of a rude name. They don't understand it. And I'm like, no, it's a place in London. I said, it's fine. But now they're seeing and they're understanding other teams in Step 5 and non-league where they wouldn't have normally seen them unless they watch a hashtag game when they play against them. So it's brilliant for me.
And you've got a very famous fan now as well, haven't you?
Yes, we have. Yes, James. Listen, you see that guy? I love that guy to pieces. He's like a little brother to me now, and I look after him. The players look after him. He's so, given the difficulties that he has within his life with his disabilities and everything else, he doesn't rely on anybody to help him. And, he does all his independent train journeys. And we're like, James, do you want picking up? No. I want to do my vlog and I want to come to the game. And we're like, all right, what time's your train arrive? We'll meet you at the station. He's like, no, I walk to the ground. And where we drive to Harlow for a home game, for example, there's a big long road that takes you into Harlow from the train station. And we see him just walking up the road, and it's like he's marching and he's just walking, and we'll pull over. James, jump in. No, I'm fine. And he'll just carry on. And when he's in the ground, I'm not even joking, that guy can turn that place into feeling like you've got 40 or 50 people in there. He will just, he's banging on all the metal boardings and he's shouting, he's singing. And the best thing is what he does. He changes end for each half. So he stands behind the opposition goalkeeper, like for each half. And when he first started coming and we got to know him, and the best thing is so old school, but when the goalkeeper's taking the goal kick and he's there behind him, and I'm like, oh my God. And then the keeper's like, does this guy ever shut up? And I'm like, nah, sorry, mate. But he's brilliant. And he's brought, like, he's got some other people involved. And we've got like 10 fans in particular right now. And it's like 10 Jameses. And they're all as passionate and all as crazy as each other. And they all want to come to the games. And they're all gutted at the moment because they are not allowed in. I've even researched maybe getting them in as ball boys and getting them on the payroll so that we can actually class them as staff to get in through the doors. And they're just, listen, this is what the football club's all about. Like,
the funny
starting
thing is,
something.
D2, we had a gentleman on a few weeks ago, didn't we, Keith? We had a young lad that was on. I think he was autistic as well, from Paul Town, and he's the drummer at Paul Town. And his hero in non-league football is James. And all he wants to do is to meet him. You know what I mean? And it's like, he said one of his biggest disappointments were, I think at one time he did one of his away vlogs that James used to do, you know, and he went to one of the games that Paul was at and he couldn't make it, or he couldn't get close enough to him to go and see him. And he said it was a real big disappointment. And one of his big aims in life is to actually get to a game with James is there so he can actually physically meet him. It's just, as you said, he's just crazy. Yeah.
He's crazy. He's crazy.
We've met James a few times, but I was lucky. He had his away day to Guernsey while we was playing over there last year. Dave, do you remember?
Yeah, he did.
They looked after him so well. It's brilliant.
But even that,
just going back to the football side of the was what he done. Just going back to the football thing, and just on a comment, I don't know if Matthew made it a little while ago about the, or it might have been yourself, Steve, about playoffs and obviously 2 going up. If I was right, when the first restructuring was sort of announced, wasn't the bottom club of the Isterman 4 were going to play the second place club either at the Skeffel or the S6 Senior, wasn't it?
I think
weren't that in place?
Yeah, I think it was the second place teams with the best points per game were going to go up against the bottom place teams at step 4. That was part of the original restructure plan, wasn't it?
And I'm pretty sure that the reason about this restructuring, like I said, was to perfectly finish this pyramid off, because it's always been lopsided at one point. So 2 could go up, 2 could go down. Because I think the last time, and Matthew, if I'm right, that 2 teams come up from the what we call the Skeffel, or what I would call the old Kent League, because I'm that old. It was it when Ian from Belvedere and someone else come up, I think?
Yes. That's what we're all crying out for, is the 2 up. And for me, I believe we need playoffs in step 5 as well, because in step 4 they have the playoffs system, which keeps the season alive for clubs. Because if you're down in 8th, 9th, going into January, you have got hardly anything to play for in step 5, because the top 1 or 2 are generally running away with it, and there is nothing left to play for. And you see it where clubs pull budgets, players are leaving left, right, and centre, and it becomes a bit of a farce. Some of the beginning of the season games where mid-table sides are taking points off of top teams, it doesn't happen after January because the players aren't there anymore. They've gone. It's crazy. The sooner they can bring that back, the better. And just to come back to the guys there from Hashtag and DT United, I'm not particularly great at internet or YouTube. My daughter is always on it. But by doing what you're doing, you're bringing the football into this modern age, which is what it needs to do. And the key for it that I always did was the community side of things. And hence the reason we're putting 4G down and all that side of things. But you're bringing a different level of support in. That you hit the nail on the head when you said a lot of non-league supporters were older guys, because they are at Sheppey. But the great thing we've started to get now, and I think the European Super League will help us all even more, because they'll be so fed up with Premier football and professional football that non-league next year will really, really grow, because we get granddads, dads, and grandkids at our games, where you get the three generations, and it's fantastic to see. And I think that will only ever get more and more. The more the Premier League gets out of step with supporters, for me, I think it's a great thing, because it just helps us all in non-league to build our supporter base. And I think what you guys have done at Hashtag and DT is fantastic. To build a club from nothing is no mean feat. And because I'm a director on the SCEFL as well, I think there should be more support given to fledgling clubs, to how to write your articles of association for your club, so you can become a proper semi-professional club quite easily. I was very lucky in that I was friendly with the old Kent FA chairman, Phil Smith, who helped me absolutely no end, because everyone thinks Sheffield United is this old club. We actually didn't come back until 2013, when we were playing on a park pitch again. So it's all started from there. It isn't this old club. And I just think what you guys are doing is stepping away from the old Blazer Brigade, which, and I have to be careful as I say this, because I'm sure I'll get someone to tell me off, but the sooner we step away from that, the better. Because you guys are in touch with the youngsters. Do you know what I mean? That's what's needed in football. It is get back in touch with reality, not just how it is at the moment, which is not reality.
I think the two main criticisms I always hear of us, and it'll be the same for DT. I'm absolutely sure. One is Hashtag isn't a place. What a stupid name. But it is just, my view on it, it is just a name, and it's a new word, if you like. It's a phrase, but in 10, 15 years' time, it's going to be, a common, commonly used and recognised word. All names are stupid if you look at them without any context. So, this whole thing about it. So the name puts people off. And, listen, we're not saying that people have got to like the name. It wouldn't be my first choice name of a football club. But it is what it is. And what it does is it represents where the foundations of the football club come from. And that's what all football clubs represent. Mm-hmm. I'm a West Ham supporter. They were Thames Ironworks. It was a works team. Well, Hashtag similar kind of thing worked in the internet and kind of world. YouTube Hashtag is representative of where we as a football club started and come from. And the other thing is, you're not a proper football club. You're not a normal football club, so therefore there's no place for you. I've worked a lot of football clubs, as we all say, we've worked at football clubs. There is no such thing as a normal football club. There is always, on the face of it, really, really well-run clubs, but behind the scenes, it's chaos. There is no such thing. Proved today by the Big Six. A football club is as good as its leaders and its owners and its leadership. The rest of it, otherwise it stops there, because we've got some of the biggest football clubs in the world alienating their supporters, and there's not a lot proper going on there.
On the place name argument, though, is that not the genius of it? Is that you're not confined to anywhere? So
well, people say we don't represent a community, but our community, funnily enough, is the internet, and it's worldwide. So there's guys in India, Thailand, Australia. They know about the Essex Senior League. So we talk about introducing, and we've had supporters, from the other side of the world, and on their trip to England have come to visit and catch one of our games.
But communities are about where you feel comfortable and where you feel you belong. And if you feel a part of something, it doesn't matter, does it? And I think that's the genius of it.
Yeah.
Your reach is not defined to a geographical area.
That's the biggest obstacle that we've had.
Sorry, Keith said something earlier about clubs finishing. Well, generally clubs finish is because there's a club next to them that grows bigger than them and outgrows them, because they are confined to that geographical area.
Well, we just had the CEO from Harlow come in, and he's turned around and said, absolutely spot on, Jay, well said. But I mean, one of the things for me though, as well, Jay, and for DT, I suppose eventually, are you looking about getting your own ground and stuff like that, you know, in the future? And if so, with what you've just said there, where you've not, I mean, I'm just going back to thinking of someone like Romford, where they're struggling to get a ground back in Romford.
Yeah.
Is it going to be more difficult for you guys that haven't actually got sort of like a home, if you know what I'm trying to say, because your family's is YouTube, the internet, etc. Will that make it harder for hashtag and for DT FC to actually find a town or wherever else to plonk your team in?
Well, we see our roots as being in Essex, and it was the reason. You know, our first year we ground shed with Haringey Borough. We've been nomadic, and we're trying to change that. And we first year we spent was in Haringey Borough because the guys had played most of their stuff at New River, so it was kind of local to that, and we needed to act quickly. We always intended to move back to Essex. Well, obviously, we've got an esports side to our club as well, so it's not just the football side. So there's kind of full-time professional athletes that play FIFA for a living. Our professionals in our club play FIFA for a living, which is crazy, but and our headquarters are based in.
Do they need a manager?
Sorry?
Do they need a manager?
They've got one, mate, but what a job. But our HQ is based in Brentwood, so you know we do feel we've just and I know DT spoke earlier about being in talks with a women's team, but we merged with AFC Basildon Ladies, who play in the fourth tier of the women's pyramid, a real good level of football. They were a club that were struggling to sustain themselves at that level. We want to build our football club, and one of the real things that appealed to me about joining Spencer on this journey was about helping build a football club and not just a team. We've merged with a local youth setup, that brilliantly run setup, that a club called Forest Glade, lots of youth teams, but because they didn't have a senior status or a club with a senior status, they would find themselves losing their good young players to other non-league clubs to go and play Eastern Junior Alliance football and the likes and that kind of level. So it was a partnership that works for both of us, and they've come under the umbrella. So therefore, it means we've expanded our committee. We've got some brilliant people part of the youth side of things, and we still. COVID kind of interrupted a lot of that, so we're still waiting for our first full season as a football club that's for, you know, men, women, boys and girls from the ages of, you know, 4 years old right the way through to senior football. But these are the things that we wanted to put in place and build on and establish. So we see our roots. Yes, our ideal world is that we will have our own ground one day, and I'm sure it will happen one day. It won't be easy, you're right, because it's one thing finding somewhere, it's another thing being able to afford it, you know, to build on it. But it's certainly part of our longer term plan. And then for us, that will open up so much more for us in terms of what we're able to offer the community and how we grow our club ourselves. Because as it stands with a ground share, you obviously you've got the outlay of the rent to play there, but also you restricted to just your gate takings because you don't have the bar, you don't have the things like the cafe or the burger van and things like that. So these are all part of our kind of longer term plan, but we're trying to do it in a sustainable way so that we're still here in 15, 20, 30 years time. This isn't just about, you know, going up through the ranks as quickly as possible. You know, we will plateau. We've been successful in our first kind of season and 2 incomplete seasons, but we know we'll plateau.
Jay, for both of you, Jay and DT, with that, with the restructuring, and if you do both your clubs do go up, is obviously that's going to attract that even more, isn't it? On the internet, the YouTubing for both of you, they're playing a higher league. Then, like you said, it helps both your clubs and as well as I know the other two clubs as well, but it helps you sort of snowball even to a bigger effect quicker, doesn't it?
It does. That is one. Sorry, I'm to say that is one of the biggest benefits with us with our ground share, is that we've got the structure in place to go the levels up without worrying. We've just got to perform on the pitch, and then we can go as part of the process. We don't have to worry about where we're going to go, what's the ground going to be like. And, you know, the guys at Harlow have been unbelievable with us. And like everything they've done for us, the way they help us, the way they've helped develop it, like they don't just, it's not like a partnership where they just say, right, yeah, give us a load of money a year and you can come and play on it. They genuinely care about what we do, and they help in every aspect of what we're doing. And, you know, they know that eventually.
Can I ask a question? Would the ground share issue would the ground share be an issue for you being moved up, as there are obviously rules in that you can't have a ground share to gain promotion, obviously because you haven't completed a whole season?
Well, that's
just being anal what the FA are.
So for us, it didn't prevent us from being promoted from step 6 to 5 because we were a ground share. I thought my understanding of the rule is you can't have a ground share for the purpose of gaining promotion.
That's correct. Yeah,
Exactly right.
So if we were in a ground that didn't have the suitable ground grading, we couldn't then go and ground share somewhere just for the purpose of the promotion. That's my understanding. Now, Keith, it's a good point because we don't know what the criteria is going to be. This is why I keep going back to.
You're fine though. What I'm trying to say, sorry, Jay, you would be fine because you've ground shared before. But what I'm trying to say, would the FA, where DT have come in and gone, well, you haven't completed a whole set, you've only played X amount, so could that cap? That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, this is one of the discussions that we're having at the moment, and you know, there's various step 6 clubs that we're having a look at. We had one league in particular that supported our application and have actually said to the FA, we support and we want them to come into our league, which was a good thing. We had one that was asking whether we were going to come in and change our name. That's why I was smiling earlier on when we was talking about the whole name thing, because they were a little bit confused.
We had that.
And then I had to reel off a load of names from the top level to the bottom level of teams that were not geographical. And so there was that side of things. And the one argument is, obviously, it's an incomplete season. We've not actually had one full season as a club. This was our first full season. And the only argument we had was, take a look at our results. We've played 8 games. We've done this. I don't know what more we can do. We have to take it on the chin if they say, no, you have to stay in, you know, step 7 for a season and do it properly. By all means, if that's the case, so be it. We'll do it that way. But we feel that and it's not a big-headed thing. It's just I know we all know we're too strong for that level. And I don't think it's fair on other teams as well, because, you know, a lot of them are looking at it and saying, well, what's the point in playing against them? We're going to get slapped today. So it's like, it's about fair competition. And you know, and we had one team, they said that one league, that turned around and said that we would have to go into their division 3, which was not even a step for us to go through and get to that step 6. And I was like, I'm not being rude, but if we went into your division 3, I goes, like, it would be over by Christmas. What's the point? I goes, there's no real competition in what you're trying to achieve. The idea is that it's a competition, but it's an equal competition. And I said, I'm not asking for any leg up. I'm not asking for favors or backhands or anything like that. I'm just asking you to look at our application on the face of what it actually, you know, is. We're not trying to pull a fast one. We're not just trying to jump up, and we're not capable of jumping that level, which is another thing why I'm happy that we're in this Essex Senior League Cup, because it's given us an opportunity to show that we can actually play at a higher level.
And do you think that'll help you with that promotion chance? Do you think if you're in and you're turning over sides from the Essex Senior League in that cup competition, do you think that might add a little bit more of a power to the elbow to actually get you?
I don't see why it wouldn't, because we've got that ammunition behind us now. Because you can't turn around and say, can you handle step 6? Would you be able to do it? Are you? Because then you can just produce the results. You know, so in that side of things, like when we played Cockfosters and when we played Hoddesdon, the managers before the game, they were all having a bit of a laugh and a joke, and you know, with us, and it's fine, and they just were very interested in us as a club. What kind of players we've got, what are we going to be like? And I don't think they kind of had any real idea. They kind of watched YouTube videos. They obviously know who I am from AFTV and everything else, and there's this persona and perception of what it might be. And then when they see us play football, and then they're like, whoa, hold on a minute, this lot, I know they're in step 7, but they're not actually a step 7 team. Bloody hell. And yeah, and by the end of each game, the managers have come up to us and they're like, I'll tell you something, you got one hell of a team there. And they're like, fair play, good luck for the rest of the competition. So that's what we want to get out of it. We want to get some respect out of it as well. We want teams to go, because I know that they are looking and going, YouTube team and blah, 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 but we want them to go, hey, hold on, they're more than the YouTube team, actually. They're a good outfit. And I want that to come across, and I want people to see that we're a proper outfit.
It was what I was saying a minute ago, when I watched Under the Radar yesterday for a bit. I didn't, like I said, my boys were in awe, and I knew them all. Most of them played for me one way or the other. But that team would have mostly beat most Eastern and North, South, East sides easily. And they are that football side. But the reason why I asked you that question is because when we had Pamela on last week, Dave, that would be exactly the same with them, because they started their club up as Grandshare, didn't they? Yeah. And I don't think that they would go in there either because of that reason. But
so where are hashtag ground sharing? Are they still at Tilbury?
No, we're at Bowers.
Bowers
and Pitsea, yeah.
So can I just ask, what are the aims of you in terms of the non-league pyramid? Because I honestly believe every club that enters the non-league pyramid has a plateau. For me at Sheppey, as chairman and 50% owner, I know I can only get that club to step 4 unless then somebody else comes in, because as I started this off, football is all about money. It doesn't matter how much we dress this up. If you want to get past step 4 into step 3, you add another £1,000 on your wage bill and off you go again. And it's all about those jumps. So where do you guys see your plateau? Is it step 4? Is it step 3, step 2?
In sense of how we exist now and how we operate now, because obviously, without investment.
I just mean where the aim is for the club, because we all have that big 10-year plan we work to, don't we? We all have it, and I just wonder, where is it taking you to, or do you just have you got a different business model, for instance, where you just as it comes along? I suppose I don't honestly know. So
our owner Spencer is. It's one of the things I really admire about him. He's a dreamer, and he's not afraid to dream in. And so if you asked him, he would say there is absolutely no reason why we couldn't be a Premier League football club in the future. But if you were to say where, but that would only ever happen with a huge amount of investment, and that would change the shape of the football club, if you like, and it become very different. In terms of where we're at now, I think we would, we felt like originally when I spoke, we had a bit of a, I think it was like a 4-year plan to get into step 4. It was, can we do it? Can we almost spend 2 seasons at each? And we're into this will be the 4th season. Next season, obviously there's been 2 incomplete, and we were on track to be ahead of time. But we know that every step you take, and I've worked at every step of the non-league pyramid, so I know the jumps and the steps that are required. We know the next one is huge, and the one after that is even bigger. And then the one after that is massive.
Off the
So
charts.
yeah, so I would say that as we stand with the people in the club now, and in terms of the playing side, but the non-playing side as well, and we've had this conversation, myself and the owner, I think we would probably plateau eventually, maybe at step 3. I think would be the ambition, to knowing that we and I think, and that's not to suggest that we will be in step 3 in 2 or 3 seasons, because that's far from it. What I'm saying is, as the club is structured at the moment, we think we could probably get to step 3, and then it's a different ball game.
Yeah.
My only thing.
Sorry, Matt.
Keith.
So I was just going to say, because you said, I took Thamesmead from step 5 to step 3 in 4 years on absolute peanuts. But for us to, as Jay said, to plateau at step 3, we needed some huge investment.
Yeah.
But we could have got there, and obviously that was a few years ago now, and things have changed. But when you do go to that level, we're talking, and then Jay said, even the one above, you need some serious investment or some massive crowds.
My issue with all of this is you touched on it, where clubs go out of business. And what happens is clubs aim for the stars, and be careful what you wish for, because you might just get there, and then you can't sustain that model. And that's what happens to non-league football teams. And you see it when an investor decides to turn up at a non-league club and throw loads of money at it, they climb to step 3. But when you get into that step 3, step 2, maybe, that's big boy money. That isn't just throwing a few grand a week in. It's big money. And I always look at it, and I always look at it as, I've got Sheffield United. I'm chairman and owner of Sheffield United at the moment. And I look at it like a grade 1 listed house, that I've got it for a period of time. And as long as I look after it during that period, and when I hand it over to someone who can do a better job than me, which comes along, it's the nature of the beast. That's what you've got to aim at as an owner or a chairman of a club. It shouldn't be about your ego or how much money you're putting in and how much people think of you. It's all about the club. And that's where professional league, they've all lost that. They seem to be more about the owners or the media and everything. It should be about the club, because the club is about those supporters that made that club. And I just believe that's the key to every club. And what happens is, when these clubs go out of business, it's because the people can't sustain them at the levels they're at. You've only got to look recently at Dover. Dover are in, step 1? They got there by investing money, but because people don't want to invest any more money, they're now saying they might go out of business. But you allowed that to happen to get there. I just think you should have a sustainable business model to get where you have to plateau, and everything comes to a plateau.
It's really important. And for me, as the manager of as a football manager, your ambition to succeed and win, you go into everything to win. As somebody that has been part of the club from its kind of beginning in the non-league pyramid, I'm also very conscious that we need to make sure that we're not trying to run before we can walk, and that we're not, because that success can come too quickly, and then the fall's even quicker, because we touched upon it earlier about teams that get relegated and the ability to, I remember looking a while back at the Isthmian North and looking at clubs that had been relegated from the Premier to the North, and the quickest that I could find anyone at that time, I think, had done it, bouncing back up. It taken them, I think the quickest it had been done was 4 seasons at the time I looked at it.
I can say, Jay, and again, when we took Thamesmead, it was, and again, they didn't go out of business because they were aiming too high. I basically run the whole club, and we just didn't have the money to compete at that level. Even though we'd done our best, we didn't have anyone to throw any extra money at it. And the only way we were going to bounce back is to try and keep the whole team that we had there in the beginning together. But as you know, the good players stayed and played that level, and you were left trying to scratch and go again. And that's difficult as well, because once the players get the taste for that level, rightly so, someone will come and offer them the big bucks that you can't pay to play. And that will happen at when maybe at both your clubs, even how successful they are.
Yeah,
I think
it can do. It can do. You know what? With us, we do have a plan. We do have a structure in place of where we want to go. Obviously, the first step is to find out what's happening with this season, whether we're going to stay 7, go into 6. But it's quite funny because obviously I've known Spence for a while. We've done a lot of videos together and other stuff outside of football. And I've always said to him that within 5 years, our plan for me initially is to be playing hashtag in a league game. So we're in the same division. And that will be my first, port of call, shall we say, of where I want to be. And I know that we're on the right path if we end up doing that within the 5-year period, because for me, hashtag ain't going to go no further down. And like Jay was just saying, where they're going, they should get that move to step 4 for next season. And rightly so, after the last couple of years that they've had anyway, despite the seasons not finishing, the results speak for themselves and their league position. And so in that kind of sense, that's ultimately for me, because I've said to Spencer loads of times, let's have a pre-season game, but I want a real competitive game, because that's when, you know what I mean, it's not a friendly, it's everything's on the line, so to speak. And I think that would be such a great story that, in X amount of years' time, 2 teams that have come from YouTube, built from the bottom and worked their way up, could be playing in step 4 or whatever it might be, and they're playing against each other in a league game. I think that's a brilliant story. That could be such a great, and the crowd could be massive as well.
Well, I'm sorry to be boring, but have you got the financial planning to do that from step 7? Because I just know we went from step 7 when we restarted Sheppey, and we're in step 5, and it took us, what was it? It was 4 years to get from 7 to 5. And it wasn't cheap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I know. Without revealing too much, obviously.
No, you can't. None of us can.
Yeah. Myself and 2 others in particular, we're very well set for the future and where we want to go. So
I think and the prime example with hashtag, and I can answer this for you, Matthew. They've gone and got a manager that knows what he's doing. And I'm not saying none of your clubs haven't, by the way, so don't take that the wrong way. But his connections of players are massive as well. So, and I know Joe quite well, I wouldn't think that hashtag are throwing checkbook money at players that don't need to at that level to get them out. I think they're very astute and doing really well with that, and have got that. They've got someone in to get them where they are now and above.
Yeah,
I'll blow your trumpet, Joe.
It's all.
Appreciate that, Keith, mate.
I think that's in terms when you touch and you see clubs who have a good budget and still fail, is when the budget is solely spent on the playing staff, and you end up signing the type of player who will come for a season, take the money, and then when someone's paying it the following season, they'll move on. Clubs, if they can attract a good budget, that budget has got to be spent on everything: the infrastructure, the manager, people behind the scenes who are going to add value and attract more value to the club. And if you've got that blueprint, then having a good budget is worthwhile, because you're building the club as you go, not building a player.
I think it's a really good point, Steve and Keith said. One of my kind of bugbears about non-league football, it's probably football in general, but just when you're about it, everybody likes to talk about what other people are spending, and it's always just like, oh, they must have this, mate. I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that we don't have money as a football club. The money we probably spend, the money that could go into a playing budget, we spend on our content. So every game's filmed. It's not just a volunteer, that a lot of clubs will have that come along and film off of one camera. We're talking about a proper production. We are trying to catch up hugely on the pitch with what the guys off the pitch do. Our content team they're professional. We've got guys who lead our content team that's, has produced Soccer AM and worked with, the FA and Formula E. It's not, small stuff in terms of that. So there's a bit of a misconception probably about, well, I know from speaking to players. I speak to players and you kind of speak to them and they go, yeah, you're kidding though, right? That's not what you really meant, is it? No. But sometimes that makes your job easier. Sometimes you make, it's, we won't spend what we can't afford, because that then we just then become the club that you were talking about, Matthew.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's quite sorry, can I just say it's quite funny that you were saying that about the money side of things, because when the ESL announced the groups for this cup competition and it was shown that we were in it, I'm not going to name them, but there was one club in particular who turned around and made the comment about it just shows what money can get you. And I just sat there laughing, and I was like, I haven't paid a penny to be in this competition. I said, I've just literally chanced my arm, contacted them and said, yeah, I heard you're doing an invitational. Can we be in it? And no other Step 7 team have the balls to have made the call and to try and, get to that level and play. We did. And then we got a call back and said, yeah, there's a space free. Do you want to come in? Yeah, let's go. Ain't cost me a penny.
Well, listen, guys, I really appreciate everybody coming on tonight. And then the time has literally flown by, and really enjoyed the evening. And a massive thank you to Jay for coming on tonight. Really appreciate that. And of course to Steve as well, and to Matthew, and of course to a man that I've seen loads of times losing his rag. It's the first time I've actually seen him not lose his rag. No, I'm joking. It missed the DT, and of course Keith as well. Massive thank you for being here tonight. Next week we've got Michael from Crimpies is going to come and join us, and a few others will come on to join us as well next week. And massive thank you for watching, and to say the figures have still been absolutely fantastic. So we really appreciate you coming on a Monday night watching us. And until then, forget about that Super League stuff. DT has, and we will see you next week on the D&K Reposs show.